So what's up, everybody? Welcome to the third installment of Video Game Industry Real Talk, but this one is the Quit Your Day Job edition. So everybody pull out your phones and quit your job. I'm waiting. I'm just
right
waiting.
now. I think Carl's a go-getter. He already quit his job.
You already did it. So several of us here on this panel have already done this foolish mistake, and I think half of us can say we only half regret it. So basically what we're going to do on this panel is we're going to just introduce ourselves, tell you guys what we've done, what we're known for, and then we're basically going to have a conversation with everybody and just be like, come line up at this mic and ask us questions, and we'll tell you the real shit that you don't want to really hear. Oh, also I cursed. Anyways, hi, I'm Sheena Perez. I'm known for the game of Spooky's House of Jump Scares and Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion HD renovation on Steam. That's me. Hi.
It's not on sale anymore.
Hello, I'm Phillip Johnson. I'm creative director, engineer, founder of Invisible Collective. I used to work for a company called Red Storm in Ubisoft out in Cary, North Carolina, and lost my job there. And then moved here to Austin, where I lost my job again due to a company closing, and then was indie for 10 months.
I am Travis Rupp-Greene. I am half of Albino Moose Games. I had a terrible professional situation that ran away from me, and I just watched it go. And then I co-founded this studio, and we made Spooky's HD. I do the engineering side of things. I think I've like 12 to 14 million people have used something that I have architected. And so that's kind of my place in everything.
Yeah. Hey, cool guy.
Thanks.
What's up? I'm Phil. I'm a 3D generalist. A lot of people here know me as Mountain Dew. I run a successful YouTube channel. I'm also game dev. I do 3D on the entire pipeline. And that's about it. You know, I help these guys out, and you know, I make fun stuff on the internet, and you know, I make video games.
You all sound so hungover.
I didn't even drink last night. That's
hey,
the impressive
part. No, I am Ryan Morrison. I'm on Twitter and Reddit as Video Game Attorney, and despite there being a law panel going on right now saying it's the video game lawyers, you'll learn way more law here. Waka waka.
It's true.
Waka waka.
That's what we call defamation. We've already started.
Wow, we're learning already, and I already just don't want you to talk anymore.
Ryan's going to be probably doing most of the talking because he just can't stop.
That's
like,
not true.
He just
ever.
can't stop. He's like a wind-up toy, and just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes.
But this should be a community experience. So on the count of 3, everyone say your names, so it's not just one-sided.
All right, are you guys ready? We're going to do this for real. Like, we're being serious. So if you don't do it, you better get out now. Okay, so 3, 2, 1.
Lord Chesterfield.
I love every single one of
Thank
you guys.
you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're done with the annoying introductions. So if you guys have any questions, please line up at the mic and ask whatever you feel like, where it comes from. Legal to 3D to community management, programming.
Favorite color.
I don't even know what this guy does.
Yeah, this is going to be more Q&A than us just talking at you. So we know a lot of you guys are developers or trying to be developers, so really ask whatever you want. We're going to be brutally honest with you.
What are certain genres? Now, when you have an indie project that you start, and this is more to Sheena and everyone else, but I'm sorry. Now, when you have an indie project, obviously, it's kind of like how you're not going to be able to make a giant, spectacular, world-defying. Like, you can't make the Lord of the Rings on $10, basically. So when you're doing a game, that can sometimes limit the genre that you're in. And how did you get around that? And am I making any sense right now, or am I mumbling and making a bunch of gibberish? Because I understand if you say that.
Like a cost-effective
Yes,
genres.
yes, exactly. Thank you. That's much better.
Succinct.
Thank you. Much more sustained.
Hey, you went first.
Thank
it's
you.
not easy. You killed it.
No, you did fine. You did great.
So when we had done Visible Collective, the game that we did was Battle Sauce. We did it as a game jam, and there was no AI and no online when we did it, and this is like, we were finding the fun without having to do all sorts of crazy stuff. So party games are kind of like not a bad place to start for like a cheap genre to explore.
The other thing to look for is genres where there's like pressure, where people want a game and there aren't games. Indie horror it's still pretty good just because there's a lot of output in it, but it mostly sucks. So if you have a good game, it can rise fairly quickly.
Absolutely, but I'm also going to just throw this out there as just general advice, and I've seen a lot of indies get burnt by this. Your first game should never be an RPG, ever. Ever. I know there's a couple of people in the crowd that are like, fuck.
Yeah.
And
Do
you're
one
right.
thing, do it right.
Do one thing, even just start off with like a fun little, like, if you want to learn how to make games, just make 2D side scroller on Game Maker. Just do that. Like, make 4 levels and see how you do. And then after that, kind of scale up your projects as you learn from experience. Don't go all out on your first project. That's like a mistake that everybody does. And so with Spookies, it's very basic. It really is. Spooky's a basic bitch. Like, it's just like, you got your floor plan that just kind of randomly generates, and then you got some cute little monsters that we, did some homage to. It wasn't very complicated. Spookies has never been complicated. And so you always just want to start with, when it comes to genres, you don't want to start with an RPG first, and you always want to make the easiest thing you possibly can to even see if you even like making games to begin with. Because I know the appeal of making games is pretty hype, but it's not always worth the time, the effort, the money, kind of thing in the long run.
I did the math on Spookies, and we made around minimum wage. So you could stock boxes at Walmart and get paid more than doing indie development, but I like making games.
So we'll take the minimum wage making games.
Yep.
Hopefully that answers your question, unless any of these guys got anything.
I want to chime in. Try not to shoot for the moon. Everyone wants to make something really epic and ridiculous. I think that's everyone's dream. Everyone wants to make, something Naughty Dog style and all that. But those are incredibly large teams with people with lots and lots of experience. Even myself, I have huge problems with shooting for the moon. And it's tough because you could be setting yourself up for failure. If you really want to do something or get an asset out that's a lot of work, those assets can take a month. A hero asset for a game can take a month of work, just one asset. So you need to kind of ballpark where you want your work to go and what it's going to look like, but not past a certain point where it's going to take you 10 years of development because there's 3 of you and you don't have the experience on that. So like find a good spot where it's like, I think this is where I want it to look, but I don't want it to, completely destroy me when it comes to time and work.
And also just finish something.
Yeah.
We do so many consultations with somebody. They'll come to us with their game idea. They do everything the right way. They get their trademarks and copyrights, et cetera, et cetera. And trademarks take 6 months to 2 years to go through. So when we go back to them with the the next step in that process, I can't tell you how many devs are like, oh well, we've actually started 3 new projects already, and blah blah blah. None of them are near market. Just finish anything, whether you're a writer, artist, or programmer, and you'll feel a lot better about yourself, and you'll actually be a developer instead of a dreamer.
Yep. And like 2 things: game development glossary, hero asset. What Phil said, that is an asset that gets shown a lot, and so it needs to be extra polished. So that's going to be your main character or a monster or something that sits on the screen. Whereas it doesn't necessarily matter if a table on the side, doesn't look so great. Your main character needs to be.
We call it cutting corners.
Yep. And no, we call it efficiency. And the other thing is it's very easy to add complexity later. It's hard to take it out. So start with something simple. Be like, hey, this is cool. How can I differentiate this? And then start iterating from there. And I think that wraps us up. Yeah. Next question.
I got something for you fine people.
Yeah.
What is something you go back and tell yourself, knowing that you were going to go into an indie field, what could you tell yourself to make things easier on yourself now? Good luck.
I think for me it's prioritizing my own physical health more, like making sure that I was going out running and and exercising and stretching and trying to get good sleep, because like I was just making me a bad developer by not prioritizing those things. And then also learning how to collaborate and lead better. Those are lots of like hard lessons I had to learn the bad way. So I don't know. I guess that one requires a bit more experience, but it's kind of, I wish I knew how to have been a better leader then for the team I was on.
This is going to sound a little cocky, but indie development was a breath of fresh air for me, because I had done big corporate stuff where the will of the project was not directed by anybody who played games or enjoyed games, or it was, bizarre, like large company kind of stuff that I didn't have a personal investment in. And so being able to actually have the reins and prioritize things and go, okay, I think this is important, I did it, it's done, on to the next thing, was a huge breath of fresh air for me.
Well, you're just gonna be cocky. That's cool.
Yeah.
So with me, it was kind of in the same boat as him. My first job was like an indie thing that I like killed myself on, basically, where I was like having these manic episodes where I didn't sleep for like 48 hours because I was like composing these like ridiculous like orchestra tracks that needed to be done within like a not reasonable time for me. And then knowing how awful that was for my physical, my mental, my emotional, I was like, man, I need to take some steps back and try and improve how I'm gonna do my next coming projects. But then I ended up working for another company who's like a sister company of Ubisoft, and well, that was just as rough as my first job. So then I went into Spookies also with that breath of fresh air where I could take the reins and I could do what I want and step away and take breaks whenever I needed to. If I felt overwhelmed, I was like, oh man, I need to like walk away and like roll around on the floor and just cry for like 20 minutes.
And the other depressing thing was that project that you did all the orchestral music for was dead on arrival, right?
Yes, it was absolutely dead on arrival.
It didn't make it past having a trailer.
Yeah, so that's part of indie and making
Real
games.
talk.
Real talk.
For myself, I think it was just like practice more on certain things that really suck and you don't want to do. Like I'm the artist of the group for the most part, right? And so I'm going to be talking like all art. But it was just more like do all the practice and stuff that you don't want to do that sucks, and it's not fun. And you sit there and you do your anatomy studies, or you sit there and you sculpt something 15 or 20 times because you suck at it. It's like, I can't do faces, so I'll do a sculpt today of a face. Or like I'm really bad at ears, so I'll sit there and I'll study reference of ears for like a week, and then I understand like I can do it. So that's something that I kind of wish that I knew in the past, that I can sit there and just know that I should probably study in certain things a bit more. And then secondly, I think appreciating all of your other skills will probably help you a ton. Like I really, really, really enjoy making things in After Effects, and I do a ton of layering. And that is basically texturing in 3D. So like going into After Effects and just being like, here's a background, and then here is, a color correction, and then some texture on it, and I build up these huge compositions of, 30 to 40 layers. That's just Substance Painter. That's just me putting texture on a gun. Because I can start with a base metal, and then I put some grime on it, and then I put the paint layer, and then I go there, and I can do that for hours. And it's just like, and I realized that the skills that I had from After Effects doing like that layering is the exact same thing. So it was really interesting going into that and like picking up Substance instantaneously for doing like texturing for weapons, because it was just like, oh, this is Photoshop for guns, or like, and that's what it is. It's just like, here's some layers, you slap on detail, and then a secondary, and then tertiary, and then you're good. So I think just maybe dipping in other skills that you have as well, just so that you can, use them for other things.
And in terms of doing things that suck, I'm not the developer here, I'm a lawyer. So I talk to developers all day, every day, and I really can't stress enough that one of the things that sucks when you're starting your own indie studio is making sure it's an indie studio. And that means focusing on the business and legal things even a little bit. You have to think about whether you need to start a company. If you have partners, you should have a contract amongst yourselves. Contracts save friendships. If you're using a contractor, you want to make sure you have an agreement there. Without one, if you pay an artist to build you something, that artist owns it forever. And they can fuck you later when you sell your game and you're doing really well. All of a sudden it's, whoops, my artist is holding my game hostage. So take care of all those little things first and realize that it doesn't matter if you're indie. If you're selling a game for $1 on the App Store, or even free on the App Store, you're just as liable as EA selling a AAA release. So you really want to make sure that you're taking this stuff seriously and doing it the right way. And that I'll just get it out of the way because I like to say this on every panel. If you're using LegalZoom, you're an idiot. You know, you're asking to be ripped off. Either figure out the stuff yourself if you can't afford help. Go to the state website, figure out how to make your own corporation or whatever. It's not that hard. And the stuff that is harder, pay an attorney. Now, I don't care what level you are, I don't care what your income is. There's a lawyer in this country that wants to work in game dev and is trying to get into game dev and is smart enough to help you for whatever your budget is. So think about that and do that.
And kind of an addendum to that is, you know, EA can afford to fuck up because they make, you know, like billions of dollars a year. If you're, you know, making not that much a year, then you can't afford to fix things later. You can only be proactive if you want to continue to exist.
It's so much cheaper to do things right the first time rather than wait for the cease and desist letter and fix it later.
I don't want to talk about it.
That's how Sheena and I met.
That's how we met. Now we're friends.
I have a small note about, oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I have a small note about legal stuff. If you really don't have a budget, like I did not have any money at all to pay a lawyer, there are like boilerplate, like just basic contract forms that you could use as maybe like a temporary thing. Eventually we replaced them when we started getting money in and we were able to hire someone. But you know, Rami Ismail has a bunch of resources like that for stuff that
yeah, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
And us too. Like if you're truly indie and screwed, like we're not gonna rip you off. My whole law firm was built on you guys helping us grow. So I don't forget that. We don't forget that, and we're happy to help. And if not, if you have something that we can't handle, I know a plethora of other lawyers that I'm happy to introduce you to. There's one. Hey Noah, you know, like just whatever. If we have plenty of lawyers that are willing to do things cheap. And if you can't even afford that, or you're just too nervous or whatever to call a lawyer, which please don't be. I promise we're friendly. I didn't even go to Harvard Law. I'm not a douche. You know, you can literally just take a piece of loose leaf, and Sheena and Travis could write down, like, here's our equity split, here's how we're going to share things, I'm responsible for this, you're responsible for that, and that's so much better than nothing. Even just writing that on a piece of paper and signing it. So take this stuff seriously, and you'll save a lot of problems.
Cool. Next question.
Hi guys. First of all, to Mountain Dew, thank you for all your original content on YouTube. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
My question is actually to Ryan. With all the attention that was given to loot boxes with the big Battlefront 2 thing a month or so ago, what do you see as the how do you see loot boxes going in the future of gaming?
I promised them I was going to behave.
This is going to be fun.
Oh, really?
No, do it.
I can't wait for
so
this.
the ESRB is no, I'm kidding. So the ESRB though the real quick backtrack is the ESRB is a group that puts the little ratings on games and things like that. They're not a government body. They are the game industry saying we're going to police ourselves so legislators who come in and believe angels are real aren't the ones writing laws about technology.
But we have to protect the kids.
That's right.
Won't someone think
so
of the children?
The ESRB does a lot we might not agree with, but they have stopped so much bad legislation from coming forward that they are absolute heroes. On this subject, they could not be more wrong. They released a statement saying loot boxes are not gambling. They gave their baseball card analogy. I actually did a podcast, Robot Congress, shout out, shameless plug, with Mark Whipple, who's way smarter than I am. He was Golden Tee's attorney. I don't know any gaming attorneys who know gambling better than Mark Whipple. And we went through for an hour, and while he is a little more careful than I am and won't say this explicitly because it's giving specific legal advice, I think we both generally agree there is not an argument to be made against loot boxes being gambling. And I think when they're targeted at kids, they're underage gambling. I think they're absolutely terrible. There are worse things in the industry. You know, the fact that T. Martin still has a YouTube channel is a criminal act. But you know, the idea of loot boxes being allowed right now is ridiculous. And we're not asking to abolish them. I'm not anti-gambling. I'm not anti-anything. I'm anti-unregulated gambling. So release the percentages of what you're going to get in there. Don't make me buy 700 loot boxes hoping I get that Zenyatta skin. You know, tell me what the percentage is for it. And then make sure you're not targeting kids with it. We have COPPA laws that are not the Child Online Privacy Protection Act that does a lot. It's gone a long way to help fix that, but it's not the solution to everything. So do I think it's a problem solved anytime soon? Maybe, because legislators are starting to see the sexy headlines about this. You know, kid spends 15 grand on loot boxes. And if they're trying to win in a small district, all it takes is one senator or even congressman to make this their platform, and we'll see change. But right now, I think the ESRB is doing way more damage than good.
And kind of an interesting aside, I think anyways, from the AAA perspective or the larger game company perspective, they see loot boxes as a godsend because games keep getting more and more expensive to produce. If you look at the credits on any given game, it's gone up a bajillion times. If you look at games from the mid-2000s, there's like 20 or 30 people max who've worked on them. Something like Uncharted has several hundreds of people working on it. And so the expectation for what you get for $60 keeps going up. And the fact that they can put something in there that people can pay for afterwards, so that the servers get paid for persistent online experiences, they're just like, hey, we can keep charging $60 for a game. This is great, and we can put more stuff in it. So they see this as a survival mechanism, which is part of why the fight is getting so bloody, is because when you are in the industry, you see this as your next paycheck, your ability to continue existing. But from outside of the industry, it looks like a fairly transparent cash grab. And it's a little bit of both.
Ground.
Yeah,
there
is a middle ground.
There has to be a middle ground, and I hope we get there. I mean, you can see, you know, companies, let's just pick random, like, throw out EA. They are obviously going too far with that, but other companies aren't, and other companies' loot box systems are totally fine. In fact, I would say Blizzard is one of the ones that's not that bad. But then you look at Dota. I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars on Dota, and it's a free game, and I got nothing for the money other than pretty hats. So, like, you know, it works, and I'm not upset about that, but they're not loot boxes always. They change to that.
Yeah, and it's also tangential. The reason that I find the baseball card analogy falls down is that all loot boxes are non-tradable, generally. Yeah. So if you could repackage and trade the things that you got from drops, then it would be fine. Like, I would not personally have a problem with that.
Yeah, I want to chime in. It's also a way to keep players playing the game, because most of the time loot boxes are earned over time, and then you pay for it monetarily. So it's kind of how the XP systems in games are, where people like to be rewarded. So they'll continuously play a game so that they'll get more loot boxes, and then they can play, you know, their gacha roll. Or they'll try and level up and all that. So it's really just a way to keep players as well playing the game, because they have to earn these things over time. You know, you can't name a game nowadays that does not have some sort of XP level up system or reward for playing the game longer. You know, not where we had shooters back in the day where you would load up the game, you play it, and, you know, you're done in 3 hours and you're good, and nothing has changed other than your skill level. Whereas now it's, you know, you load up a game and now I'm level 1 and now I'm level 2, and then it's like after level 2 I just got my loot box. That's cool. Maybe I'll buy a key for it. So it's also a way to keep players engaged, you know, because they want to keep people playing their game, because if a game dies, then it doesn't make any more revenue and people will not buy the game anymore. So it's also a way to do that, because they just want to keep, you know, it keeps you going, and people have a reward center. Everyone wants to feel rewarded for doing something, you know. You go to the gym, you want to get buff. You know, you want to play a game, you want to get better, and then you can actually see a physical, you know, like representation of you getting something, then you're going to keep playing the game. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's a way to keep players. I think it's the CPP, the cost per player.
Well, you want to ARPDAU, average revenue per daily active user. You want higher than your expenses. Yeah.
So it's also a way to keep players just in the game, because they want, you know, to get that reward for playing.
And further degeneration, if you have your rewards random, that provides far increased engagement. It's really funny.
Yeah, I know, because you're a victim of that.
Yes.
How much did you spend on Overwatch?
I spent $35 on the Lunar New Year event a year ago so that I could get the Reinhardt skin.
And he got it no, he didn't even get it on any of the boxes. What ended up happening is he got so many duplicates that he ended up getting enough currency to buy
But that's why Overwatch systems isn't even that bad, because eventually they give you enough to buy what you want.
But
other games don't.
At the cost, that was like a $35 Reinhardt skin, and I hope you love it.
I do. I love it. Every time I see it in the play of the game, I'm very happy.
Anyways.
But also, Ryan.
Long answer short, they suck.
Yeah.
I just wanted to plug that Battleslavs has 1,100 hats and no DLC or loot boxes.
Wow. Next question.
All right, sorry.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
I'm a game programmer at a small indie company, but I'm also working on my own game on my own time. So I don't get to do a lot of time for my own game. But I think it's reached a point now where I have a prototype and a vertical slice that I need to bring on additional people. I need to hire an artist to sort of give me that art direction. But I'm very intimidated by the legal aspect of that, especially because I can't do that as my job since I do the other stuff. Also, most of the professionals I work with are busy. So I have to find other networks and work with people I don't know. And I was wondering if you had any tips or tricks for hiring contractors or the legal aspect of that.
Yeah, I mean, the quick thing up front is like, there's so much information out there. Most of it is bad, but I truly believe this. Everyone in this room who's interested in this field and is nerdy like we all are is smart enough to tell what is bad and what's good. Check the sources, check who actually authored it. You'll see attorneys write things usually that end with, but call me and hire me to do it right, which I try not to do, but sometimes that is the actual answer. Like, this is not something you'll do it yourself. On the flip side, you'll see people on Reddit and elsewhere say, you know, if your game's free, fair use, it's free, it's always fair use, and it's just wrong and stupid. So, you know, make sure you're checking who's saying what to you. Something like a contractor is generally super easy to do. The reasons are, a contractor agreement is mostly a nice template agreement. Most lawyers will do it for you pretty cheap. I wouldn't use a form off the internet for that relationship in particular, because there's a lot of little things you can mess up that would cost you a lot of tax money. The nice thing with a contractor is you don't have to worry about taxes. If you're paying them $10,000, you pay them $10,000 and they have to pay their own taxes. You don't have to withhold like an employee or anything else. The thing to watch out for is what you're titling them and what your actual job duties are for them. So the more they do their own stuff, the more they're a contractor. The more you're controlling everything they do, the more they're an employee. They can't have, they basically can't be a role essential to the company. And that's not true. That's what the law says. So what that means is you can't call them art director, but they can do all the art for your game. It's stupid, but those are the kind of check boxes you have to think about. And these are the things that, like, if you call myself or Noah or another attorney in this industry, we're not going to charge you to tell you. This is all very general consultation stuff. Happy to go through it with you. The actual contract is what costs a few $100s, and it's good forever, though. You know, it's something that you have now an attorney endorsed one, and rather than it be a better contract than you're going to find elsewhere, what you're really paying for is that attorney to walk you through the contract and show you what clauses you can play with, what you can't, how payment structures can work, what states you can do it in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll have something that you're not only know is safe, but you're also confident to use, and that's important. And then once that's done, all your worry is gone forever, because you can then go work with artists whenever you want. Right. And again, we're not going to charge you if you call us up in a year and say, hey, I'm thinking of bringing this artist on for 40 hours. Is this now an employee? Quick, easy answer, and we'll always talk to you for that. So definitely don't be nervous and try to do it the right way.
I want to chime in. I'm a contractor myself. So a lot of us actually have our own contracts. Right. I mean, you wrote mine, and I give it, and so I'll give it out, and I'll just be like, you know, here it is, you know, and I have a template for it. You know, I have my name, I have the hours, I have the company name, and I just type it in, and then we're good to go. My advice for that, though, is make sure that you give them a delivery date, because it's just gonna sit, like, it's like, oh yeah, here, okay, do it for me, and then you'll get it in 6 months, you know. Put it in the contract, or, you know, in yours or in theirs, that there's a delivery date of like 2 weeks. It has to be done, and it has to be, you know, adequate for what you want, you know, and make sure it says that.
Milestones save lives.
Yeah, that's kind of that's my chime in on this, is that you were worried about qualifying potential people. Do progressive delivery. Be like, okay, I want this asset. And find people, for artists specifically, who have a wide range of style. People who can stylistically switch are the ones you're going to want.
So I know it's not fair, but like, what do you guys generally do for that first milestone when you're, like, what's a normal probationary period?
2 weeks, one asset.
Okay.
And make sure you check up on your artist. You want to see progress. You know, as much as you can, you know, maybe even put it in the contract, be like, I want to see progress, you know, once every few days. I want to see what you've done, and, you know, I want to make sure that everything is going good, because otherwise, you know, if they're a flake, they're not going to work on it until, you know, whenever it is, and you might not even get the asset, or it's going to be delivered 2 weeks late, and then you're just going to sit there shrug. And if you have a tight deadline, then it's going to be worse, because it's going to be hard to manage this person if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, especially if it's remote. Because if you have 10 or 15 people and it's all remote, then you have to, you know, pay attention to the guy that's over here, you know, the guy who lives in Canada, you know, potentially the guy over here in France, and it's just like different hours, and then suddenly it's ridiculous. And people are delivering at bad times, and the pipeline will get worse. So, you'll have the modeler will deliver, 2 weeks late, and so it gets to the rigger, 2 weeks late. And then they could be a week late, then suddenly you've just snowballed your entire pipeline because everyone is delivering slightly later. And so the one asset suddenly took 3 months as opposed to, 3 weeks.
And then the people implementing it tear their hair out.
Thank you.
All right, cool.
How do you know your game is done?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
You
Yeah.
don't.
Okay.
Spookies
Our game isn't done.
Yeah,
Spookies is not done.
Spookies, we explicitly set a milestone for ourselves, which was the first 1,000 rooms, the base game, and we said, okay, when we get this done, we will release it, and we have a plan for the stuff that we want to do afterwards. Especially in this day and age, there's no such thing as done, because I can push a new build live to Steam within like 5 minutes. So set a milestone with yourself to keep yourself honest, and then use yourself and people who you trust for feedback to say, yes, this is good enough to ship. And good enough to ship is different from great. Keep that in mind.
Set a date, I think, as well. Like, I want this done by this, and like, set yourself, your heart on it. Because otherwise, there is no finish. I can take an asset and I can sit on an asset for a year if I wanted to. I could just, I'll put threads on it here, and maybe the hair needs to be different here, and I think, the skin tone here, it needs more, I can sit there, I can just polish an asset and it's a big problem with me actually because I'm a perfectionist. So I can sit there and just be like, boom, 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 and you can be like, oh, I think the lighting here needs to be changed. Then suddenly, like, you ended up changing your entire look of your game, and then you're going to revise your entire game 5 or 6 times, which we know people which have done. Where it's just like, oh, I'm going to change this character, and then, oh, I like him better now, and then, oh, this person doesn't match this time, so then you work on that, and then, it just keeps changing, and then your base game will just continuously change, and you'll be stuck in development hell. You'll just be making the same game and polishing the same thing over and over again, and then making changes, and then you're stuck. So you should probably find, like, a date that you really want to be solid with, and be like, it's going to be done here. And, if you have a way to make sure that that is super set in stone, like, some sort of public delivery date, that will help a lot, because then you'll be like, okay, now everyone knows it's going to be done during this time, not just like this date that you have set in your head that you can be like, no one's going to know, it's going to be, it won't be done then. But like if you have a public like release on Twitter, or like especially Kickstarter or something like that.
Kickstarter will make sure you do it.
Yeah, it better be. Yeah, and you will not sleep, the week of, but
just ship it.
But it'll be shipped.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever you have, just ship it.
But yeah, like just find a date.
All right. Thank you.
So as someone with a full-time job, the concept of quitting my job and having no income and especially no health insurance is downright frightening.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yes. So let's say you are laid off or you quit. What would you do in that situation? Like, and what did you do once that happened?
Just call your dad for a loan.
Kidding.
My dad was in jail.
I don't know.
So when I lost my job at Red Storm, I was on unemployment for like 6 months, and then I ran out and I got a job in Austin, and then worked that job for a bit, and then that company shut down, and basically I rolled the dice. We had found a publisher with Rooster Teeth Games, so it was kind of like, do I commit to the indie game, or do I find another job and still do this at night? And I was like, well, it's time to roll the dice, and took a lot of my savings and did that. So, I don't know. It wasn't fun.
We did the same thing. We basically, after we lost our jobs, quit our jobs, whatever you want to call it, and whatever those people that we used to work for want to call it, we essentially, hey man, depending on who you ask, it's a different story. Travis quit, but his boss said that she fired him. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. That's just the reality of this industry.
Bad times.
Bad times. We lived off savings.
Yeah.
We purely off like savings, and every once in a while I will do contractor work for like web development or like consulting. For instance, I do consulting for like indies, and things like that, on how to do your Kickstarters, how to do your Steam pages, how to do your, anything like stuff. So we had to keep doing like side jobs, and living off savings to kind of coast until Spooky's HD was done.
Yeah, I have a unique set of circumstances because I am a full stack engineer who has a pretty strong resume. I could find a job pretty quick if I really wanted one. So it was kind of low risk in that regard. I'm not going to starve to death.
Yeah, I want to say just make sure that you have enough savings. If you think you're going to work on something for 6 months, I hope you have 6 months worth of money. And you know, if you're knee deep in game dev and you have a skill set, you can contract out. So you can work on other people's games, you know, while you are working on your own thing. You know, I'm a modeler, and you know, I did a rigging job a couple months ago, you know, while I was working on other things. And it's just, you know, my skill sets move around, and people want to hire me, then I'll take a side job, you know, over the net while I'm working on what I want to work on. And you know, if you have these skills and you're good enough and people want to hire you, then maybe your game will be good too, actually. But yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to contract out. If you have the skill set that, you know, you can make a game with, then you can make other people's games in the meantime, and they'll give you money to do it, as opposed to you hoping that your game is going to make money later.
And you're not always going to be in a position where you have the right amount of savings or health insurance or whatever you might want, and that's when you have to make a life decision. Do you want to roll the dice or go the safe route? And you know, I graduated law school almost $500,000 in debt. I had a nice job offer that I turned down to start my own thing, and I had absolutely no savings. I lived on a friend's couch and stole pictures from IKEA's website to make a law firm webpage, and you know, just kind of toughed it out and ran with it. And it, you know, it worked. And it's same with what they did. I mean, they bootstrapped and made their own company, and they're successful with it. You have to be willing to change what you're doing without losing what your goal is, because sometimes your game might just not be what everybody wants it to be, or you might need to do some kind of terrible branded thing or whatever to make enough to pay rent. You know, those kind of decisions are what you have to come to terms with if you're going to go that route without any kind of safety net. And it's you know, it's terrifying, but that kind of stuff keeps you hungry and keeps you driven, and that's, you know, why we're doing panels like this. They want contract work, and I need clients. So, no, I'm kidding. But it's
there's really, a lot more money in trying to make other people's dreams come true than trying to make your own come true.
It's really nice to go in and punch out of someone else's bank account, basically, and someone else's worries. It really changes when it's yours. It becomes 24/7. I mean, my phone is literally just buzzing this entire time from client messages. It's insane, and it's nonstop. And that's not because I'm a lawyer. I mean, their lives are just as busy because this is their life now. You know, you are married to your job when it is your job, and when you own it. So take it seriously. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna go have fun and make a game. It's, hey, this is the biggest life change I've ever had. Bar mitzvah on crack. Now you're a man. You're next.
What's up, gamers?
What's up?
Are there ideas you've had as a gamer or otherwise that sounded good at conception but fell apart and were reworked or scrapped? And do you find it difficult to think of original game ideas in our modern day market?
Oh, that's a good question.
Battlesauce is my first game, so I guess no. I've never had a second one yet.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I have a whole Google Drive folder that's just full of concepts.
Yep.
And I also came up with a bunch of bullshit that we never put into Spookies because Sheena was like, that's dumb.
Why do you gotta make me sound like an asshole?
No, you're not an asshole. You were absolutely right. It was dumb. And once I was like finished pouting, I was like, yeah, okay, no, you're right.
That's true. He pouted for a very long time.
It was like a day.
That's a long time.
Okay, that's true. And I don't have trouble coming up with new ideas because, so there aren't new ideas. Doom was called a Wolfenstein clone, even though it was from the same company. So everything is just an iteration off something else. So usually I get a lot of ideas playing something, and I'm like, boy, I sure would like this if this was different. And then that usually like becomes the seed of an idea, and then changes into something that's entirely different.
Yeah, but make sure you go entirely different. Like, Doom is different than Wolfenstein. If you made your own Nazi-killing game and just made, you know, one guy a demon, that's not different enough. I mean, so many people in this industry just straight up steal ideas, change two things, and call it their own game, and that's not okay. You know, you guys are in this industry because you're creative, so create something. Make the next Star Wars rather than make a Star Wars game. It'll get you sued less, and who knows, you might make the next billion-dollar IP. Like, just go try.
Yeah.
I still think you should be shameless about just mining games for other ideas. You know, just play through them. Be like, I like the health bar. I like the combat system. I like the way these punches feel. Like, just process all of that and
figure out why it works.
Inspired by it.
Yeah, I live by that. I like to find things that I really like and be like, I really like, you know, if I'm doing something like motion graphics or something, I'll be like, I really like the way that they put the motion on this, and I like the way that came in. So I'll grab maybe that instead of like, oh, I'm not gonna take his colors and like everything from it. I'm just gonna be like, no, I'm gonna grab that, and then it's like, I like this thing from this. I think I'll add that as well, and just kind of you mix and match, but you make it your own. You know, you watch it once, or you have something, an idea from something, and then you don't open it and watch it and then recreate it. You take it from your head, and then you just kind of work it from there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, next question.
My question is really similar to the one that he just asked. Can you talk about...
So wait, hold on. So you instead of copying it, you're gonna make it different. Change enough about it.
I love this.
We planned that.
No, we didn't.
Can you talk about some of the creative challenges that you faced and how you overcame them, particularly if it had to do with the generation of new ideas, or when you were investing a lot of work in a particular idea that you were trying to weigh whether this idea was worth continuing to invest a continuous amount of work in? And when it comes to the generation of new ideas, is that something that you do something about? Is that something you can work towards, or does it just hit you out of nowhere? Thanks.
I think one of the bigger challenges is kind of being able to gauge how expensive or time-consuming a new feature will be. And there's been times where something will get pitched that sounds really exciting, and then I'm like, we can't do this. Like, it's going to be like 4 months of work, or you know, I guess it's easier if you can prototype it in like a few days. But that is like the hardest part of the creative process, is to say no, because you kind of want to like validate everyone's ideas. Especially like if like me, I don't know how to do art or do music and stuff. So usually the best strategy is to just agree with your collaborators.
It also sucks, but you have to admit defeat. Like, I can't tell you how many clients break my heart because I watch them throwing their life savings into this, or their souls into this, and they're just, the game's launched, it has no reception, or it's reviewed poorly. And they just, they get it in their heads, well, if I change that one submarine from red to green, it's going to all work out. And they just spend another 6 months on it, and the rest of their savings, and it's hard to watch. And, we try to talk to them about it, but you have to look at it as a business. And your dream might be awesome to you, but you also need it to be awesome to other people. And, you have to just be cognizant of that and aware of that. If you want this to be your business and not a hobby and not a passion project, you have to worry about mass market appeal, and that's really hard to do when you're proud of something, and they don't get it, but they will. That works until it doesn't, and then you have to be aware when it's not.
Yeah, like realistically, if you want to succeed, and I hate to say this, but it's true, you have to make the game other people want, not the game that you want. And it's the same for YouTube and all that sort of stuff is, you have to appeal to what people want, because if you don't, then people are not going to want it, and they're not going to buy it, and you're not going to make any money, and all that time that you spent goes away. And there's a balance there, because you can hope at the very least that people will like what you're doing, or it'll appeal to everyone, but a lot of the time it's just making sure that it's what people want, in that genre or just in general. And like I said, YouTube is kind of the same way as well. Doing videos on that is just like, you got to make sure that people want to see what it is, and it's not just completely random or not appealing, because no one is going to watch, what it is.
I think everybody covered what I was thinking in terms of executing something, but as far as coming up with new ideas, get out of your usual routine. Road trip, clean something, go to the library, take a walk, just disconnect from games, and there's just a fountain of new ideas that is just always going to happen. At least that's how it works for me. Yeah, textbooks especially, because you're just like, holy shit, this is weird. That's cool.
All right, cool. Next question.
Mm-hmm. Apologies if this was addressed. I know there was a panel on this yesterday, but do you have any experience with grants, and could you speak to that?
Nope.
No.
Do you?
Any legal experience with that? Okay, thank you.
People named Grant?
Yeah.
Still no, sorry.
They're hard to get and almost harder to maintain, depending on what they come from. So whether it is state-funded, government-funded, more generally, or from a school or things like that. that's even more so not your idea anymore. You have to do what they want. There are some countries and some schools that really are open and just say, here's money, do what you want with it. But just I've never seen a grant to this date that doesn't ruin the long-term even chance for success of the project, because normally that grant comes with 40% revenue share going back to whoever gave it, or complete IP control, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all negotiable, and they will negotiate it, but the people who sign the first draft are never going to have a successful career off that first thing, at least in what I've seen. I'm sure that's not always true, but especially with the country-generated ones, they're very much like, we're going to help you help us, and you have to be careful with that.
Yeah, because Fez was Canadian, if I remember correctly, and so... Yeah.
I was talking about Ireland, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. But yeah, usually grants are for something of artistic merit or like educational merit, and we're just trying to pay rent. So those don't usually cross paths. I'm not an artist. I'm just a crude engineer that makes things happen.
Great.
All right. Hey, guys.
Hey. Hello.
Yo.
Can you just tip the mic back up because they're recording?
There we go. Not like that.
Oh yeah, by the way, you're all being recorded.
Cool.
You've consented by not leaving right now.
Cool. All right, so about a year and change ago, I had an opportunity to pitch a game idea to a company that I was working for. And, I was super excited about it. I did this demo video. I animated everything. I wrote out all the design docs. It was like all ready to go. It was perfect in my head. And then the question came up, how much money do you need to make this? How much is this going to cost us? What kind of staffing do you need? And I had designed it to be pretty simple and pretty scalar so that it could be a small project or a big project. But I, at that point, realized that I have no idea how much programming would need to go into it, because I work on the art side of it, how long it was going to take, what kind of human resource management we would need on it. And I didn't know the first place to look. I was kind of asking programmers hey, based on these documents, how long would you say it would take to program this? And they were like, it depends. And so is there any my question is, are there any sort of tools or explicit strategies that I should be looking into to help me just get a ballpark estimate of the hours and cash that it would take to execute on it?
They're going to give you real answers, but my real answer, and I know this is going to sound like a joke, is most pitch decks and most decks that you're sending out to get financing or money is just confident lying. Here's what I think this is going to be, but I have no idea, and that's just the reality of it. And I've yet to see one that was backed up by financial data that made me confident in it.
Yeah.
Now you guys give real answers.
Yeah, so the ballpark figures that I know, and this is from Bay Area, so it's flexible, $10K a head per month. So minimum, a team of 5, 2 artists, 2 engineers, 1 designer, times however many months you go, you're probably looking at a year to a year and a half for small projects.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And this is recorded if you need to go listen to it.
Yeah, okay, so I'll get those numbers.
And the 10K a month is just an average, because if you're in a real company situation versus a 2-person partnership, you have to pay HR costs, payroll tax, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. All right. I had one more thing about budgeting, if I can. I'll keep it really quick. You had outlined earlier the importance of getting legal consultation when you're setting out to make a game. But in terms of where I should even start looking for something like that, I'm not just going to get on Google and search game lawyers, or should I?
You literally can. I'm the top result. I recommend you do it.
Okay. And how much would something like that cost? Is that going to be $100 for consultation, $1,000?
No, consultations are free. If a lawyer's charging you for a consultation, he's an asshole.
Okay.
That's just hands down the case.
Right.
And you can't afford them. Don't be an indie and use a lawyer that charges for consultation, because that means, and this isn't a joke, most law firms traditionally charge you for every paperclip they use. They charge you for every time they write an email, for every time they think about you. That's all billed, and I'm not kidding. That is traditional law firm billing. As far as I know, we were the first law firm ever to never charge for phone calls or emails, and that's opened up a lot of the communication with this community, and why I'm able to talk to indies, because we can just shoot the shit, and I can hear about your idea and why that part might be dangerous and this part is less dangerous, or why don't we change this one character to this and it'll be better. In terms of the actual documents, we charge for research, filing, drafting, and something else, I don't know. But basically what you need, it's the same checklist that every startup indie we've ever worked with needs, is the partnership agreement for the owners. A corporation, if it makes sense, which always is preferable, but sometimes financially, it's not the right move, because a corporation protects you if you're sued. Proper trademarks and contracts prevent you from being sued in the first place. So in order of what we usually recommend, generally, every situation is different, disclaimer, disclaimer. Right. But seriously, you know, the general advice we usually do is trademark your company name, trademark your game name, get a contractor agreement for your contractors, terms of service and privacy policy when you're ready to launch. Terms of service is one of the best things in the world to prevent you from being sued. Privacy policy is mandated, and you're committing a crime if you don't have one in most cases. We throw an NDA in because that is a document you can get off most websites, and generally it'll be okay. Most investors won't sign NDAs anymore, but they're good for play testers, and it's just good to have. And then the last thing, like I said, is a company if you can afford it. Usually an LLC, but again, it depends. And those costs will fluctuate a little bit. But just, you know, this is not me being a commercial, but just so you know, we have what's called the Jumpstart package, which is all of those items, and it's summed up in a lump sum that is, depending on your needs, $2,500 to $3,500, and that's a huge upfront cost for most of you guys, but it's also everything you need to pay for a very long time. So it's not like that's per game even. That's kind of, you're set now to be a studio, you're set up the right way forever. Right. And that's an important upfront cost. I mean, you're starting a business when you start a game studio, and legal costs in this industry are certainly one of the bigger costs. I mean, that package I just said is going to be 10 grand most places, and that's why you should shop around. But it's also something we're public about our prices, because I've always held for free on Reddit and things, but I don't want people to be surprised when we charge for trademarks and the like. We also cut our rates down always if you have under 5 people. So, you know, if you're a true indie studio, we will always be cheaper than the normal rates. And then if you're a student, we go even half of that. So if you're a student and an indie studio, you're looking pretty good to get protected. If you're a bigger studio or a bigger team and you come in with a huge idea and a team around you, come in with a budget for that. You know, come in to take care of it the right way. Or like, you know, it was said earlier, you're gonna be screwed if you do something wrong up front and try to fix it later. Whether, you know, your friend falls in love, moves halfway across the world and doesn't want to work on the project anymore, you guys didn't sign the right thing, and now, you know, who owns what? It's not the simple answer of he owns what he made. You guys are operating as a partnership without an agreement, without the right clauses, and now maybe he just owns everything you made. And it gets messy fast, and this could all be solved in a 10-minute consultation with a lawyer.
Yeah, I want to chime in. No matter who you're working with, you should probably always get a contract. It doesn't matter if it's your mom, or, you know, best friend, girlfriend, you know, things change. You know, things, they can't work on it anymore, or they move, like you said, or, you know, your friendship goes awry, whatever. Suddenly, that partnership has changed, and you guys don't know what to do with your game. So as much as it sucks, and you have to sit there, and you have to do something legal with someone that you love or trust, you have to do something legal with someone that you love or trust to protect both of you. Because if you guys suddenly hate each other, and then you have this game that was spent, 2-3 years, then what? Then, if there's bad blood there, people are going to fight. But if you have something set in stone legally, then it cannot be argued that, one person owns 50%, or they both own, or, whatever it is. So as much as it sucks, no matter who it is, best friend, family, immediately get, a contract if you guys are working or owning a game or a studio or anything like that.
And if your friend says like, whoa, we don't need contracts, why are you doing this? They're not worth working with. They're not a professional. They're not intelligently minded. They should see the risk here too. Obi-Wan would have never thought Anakin would turn on him. And look.
I would also recommend buying like a $50, $70 textbook on video game and business law. So I got one of those, and it made my relationship with my lawyer a lot easier because I just knew some of the language. And don't use it and be like, I could be a lawyer. Just use it so you can kind of meet them halfway.
Right. I didn't do that with Morrison. I'm just like, Morrison, what are all these questions? And he's just like, oh my God, I have to explain every single thing to you, don't I? And I'm like, yes.
But I love it.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
What's up?
Hi again.
Hey.
I've heard lots of people give panels and talks and stuff about being a freelance artist or a freelance musician or something. What about freelance programmers? How do you do that?
It's weird. First off, is
programmers can't really pay per asset very well most of the time.
The thing that's weird about freelance programming is it's hard to have an estimate without knowing what the project is. and then there's always changes. So as a programmer, you have to build in a lot of like futzing room. So like take your initial estimate and double it.
Yeah.
And then put it there. And I guess if you're doing a contract, I would say settle on an hourly rate with an estimated number of hours. And then when you hit that, be like, look, this is the estimate. Beyond this, you will be invoiced.
Okay.
Yeah, and just estimates are hard. If it's something that you've done before, you'll be able to give an estimate confidently, but it's a tricky proposition either way.
And if you are like Travis and you have imposter syndrome, you're going to shoot very low for what you deserve.
Yeah,
Properly,
I definitely ask for less money than I should.
Definitely. And I have to be the one to be like, hey,
That's
like
why she's my business partner.
Like, you're like, because like technically, like depending on the level of programmer, so you're junior, you're a senior, you're architect, things like that, and it goes up and up and up depending on that skill. And so like if you want to go like SF prices, like your typical like software engineer could like make like $50 an hour, kind of thing. And so then you're paying on the hour you're doing this, or like sometimes programmers will just do like, all right, like 5,000 lines of code, this is going to take me X time, so we'll just do a flat fee of like 5,000, or 10,000, or things like that, and depending on how complicated you want to get things. But yeah, software engineering when it comes to contracting, and especially financially, is like really weird and confusing. It makes no sense.
Okay.
But what he just said is right. Like that's why you guys partner. Try to partner with someone who's nothing like you in a lot of ways, but you still get along with. Same with my law firm. I like forget to bill people, and I always say that our costs are $1, but I have a business partner who pays the rent and makes sure that everything is done the right way. I don't think you should ever have more than one, maybe two partners when you're starting something. I think partnering with someone is a bigger legal commitment than marrying them. So all the consults we have that are like, hey, there's 10 of us, we're all students, 2 of them don't work that hard, but they'll pick it up, don't worry, and this guy does this, and he does this.
They won't pick it up.
Yeah, we're all going to be partners. Don't. We won't even draw that up for you. Like, we'll tell you no and go figure out your life. So it's, I really, really, really hate to see new startups that have more than 3 owners, because I think that's just asking for a world of trouble. Because startups have problems and stresses, and not everyone's going to deal with it the right way.
All right.
And engineering is expensive. I just did the math on the job that I turned down, and it would be $120 an hour would be my fee.
And I only pay a minimum wage too.
Yep.
So in other words,
Indie
it's
games.
such imposter syndrome that I can just manipulate the system.
You're in this too, Sheena.
Damn it.
Starting us off and closing us out.
Once you have fully planned and conceptualized everything for your project, what pushes you to finally start physically working on the actual product itself?
We don't fully conceptualize. We start with an idea, see if it's fun, and then just build from there.
Just build up after that. It's game dev is essentially like improv, where you're just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I made a game where I could jump? Sweet. Okay, so make a
Wouldn't
little,
it be cool if there was a
that's been done
4-player party
before,
game where you were all
I like
sloths?
it. Yeah, and then we started with sloths and hoverboards and machine guns and stuff, and then we were like, this isn't really deep enough, and then later we had dodge rolling. Why are you guys laughing? It's a serious game.
But that's game jams.
Organic process,
Yeah.
that makes it a lot easier, because then you're like, okay, this is fun. Let's see if we can make this fun, and then if it isn't fun, then we'll just take that feature out,
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the term, a game jam is like anywhere between 24 hours and a month-long thing where you just make a product. And so having that kind of time constraint is good to just make something fast, see if it's fun. And if it is, expand it.
Very well, thank you.
All right, well.
That was perfect.
Perfect timing. Good job, guys. And
everybody pat yourself on the back.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate and love all of you guys. If anybody was too shy to ask any questions on the mic, after this is done and we get kicked out, we'll be willing to talk to you guys face to face.
Yeah, we'll be hanging out outside.
We'll be hanging out outside, so meet us out there if you want some questions, hugs, high fives.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming,
a business
guys.
card or anything.